As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission, I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain, keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHH LP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And I just wanted to say, I hope people appreciate that our shows are live. So these are not rehearsed shows. These are not scripted shows. It's people speaking from the heart, and also people taking the time out to kind of spend some time with all of us. And today's show is really a blessing to have. We're going to talk about autism advocacy, and it's Helen's story. Helen Taylor is with us, but Helen and also guests, really over the last 4 or 5 years, have shared their story, have shared how they want to make this planet a better place, how they're committed to making the planet a better place for all people. And so people are not putting their lives on the line per se, but they are going public with their interests, with their passions, with their dedication. And I just want to salute all my previous guests, my previous co-hosts, and particularly my guest today and my co-conspirators, Reverend Leroy Perry and Reverend Elvin Slayton are with me. I'm going to call them my co-conspirators today. And if we all get locked up, Helen, you can come visit us in well, not Niantic, but maybe whatever male prison we might be sent to. And we're not rabble-rousing during these shows. We're really trying to inform, inspire, and to stimulate. I mean, there's so many things that we got to change in the society and make it better. And today's show is really focused on one aspect of that in terms of really lifting up all people and also the role of the parent. What the role of the parent, the first teacher. So Helen Taylor is with us. We're going to talk about autism advocacy and Helen's story. So Reverend Perry, share a little bit, if you would, about the objective of our telling our story, telling your story series, and just to kind of center and give us some contextualization.
Thank you, Tom. I'm just glad to be here this morning to share in this epic program that we're doing in terms of telling our story. You know, the African proverb says that when the hunter tells his story, he is the king of the jungle. But when the lion tells his story, he is the king of the jungle. And so what we're trying to do in telling our story is to hear the story of those people who are really adversely affected, so that we can look at the deep and hidden curvatures of how marginalized people face even disproportionately more problematic and hurdles than others. And how they are able to cope with them, how they are able to deal with them, is a significant story that needs to be told. And we need to hear those stories. And so this is our series, and we hope that we can bring to our communities the backside or the front side of what's going on with individuals in our community and the hurdles that they have to go through, disproportionately so with our counterparts.
And Reverend Clayton, I'm going to bring you in a second, but I want to give Helen a chance to kind of jump in and to tell us about herself and her family, and also something like Chase. There's a young man called Chase in your life, Ms. Taylor, that you're going to share with us about. But share with us a little bit about your family experience with Chase's diagnosis and yourself. And this kind of your show, and we're going to support you. We're going to share the love. We're going to have the heartbeat from our love. Hope you can feel it through the Zoom.
Thank you.
Yes. So good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you all so much for inviting me. About myself, my name is Helen Taylor. I'm a proud Waterburyan. I'll say that first. I am the mother of Chase Taylor, who is now 21 years old, and he's on the autism spectrum. My husband is Alan Taylor, and he has a big brother called Chad Taylor. So Chad was our oldest son, and he progressed quite, quickly. He started speaking, early at 2, 3, and he was progressing as a typical child. when Chase was born, he was smiling, happy young man, always smiling, drooling. And a few years later, we saw a little change in him. His eye became a little droopy. And then we started bringing him to the pediatrician. We thought, everything was fine. His little delayed. And I was concerned about it, but people kept on saying to me, and I want to share this with parents, stop comparing it with your other child. Well, sometimes you have to compare it to your other child to see the differences. So when people say that to you, don't let that discourage you. You go by what you feel, your gut, and to seek something more to find out about your child. And so I went to he went to his normal doctor's appointment with the pediatrician. And she's like, well, he seems delayed. You might want to look at birth to 3. And I said, okay, but I didn't know what birth to 3 was. So we just kept on going because I didn't know really what that meant to me. And then we went back again. She's like, he's almost 3. You might want to put him into birth to 3 program. I said, yeah. She's like, yeah, because if you do, he might get the help he needs going forward. And I said, okay. And so fortunately, I had a great village. My husband and I had a great village of my sister-in-law and our nieces, and my sister-in-law took care of Chase. And so birth to 3, while we worked, went to her home to help out Chase. And so my sister-in-law, I'm not gonna say her name because she likes to be private. Yeah. She's our guardian angel over Chase. She's like his second mother. And so birth to 3 went there. And then the next thing after the birth to 3, they were saying, well, there's some delays with him. And we didn't know anything about autism. Autism was never mentioned at all during this time. And, if we're going to school with a pre-K program at Bucks Hill, we had to put in a special education program. And that took us aback a little bit. And we're like, wow, special education, and we don't want our kid labeled for the rest of their life. And I heard they go into the school system, it stays with them. This is us not knowing any education during that time of what any of this meant. And we said, okay, we're going to do it as long as they could take that away. If he's not special needs, then we could take that away from him. I want that in writing. I don't want this on his record for the rest of his life. Going forward, he went into the program. He was special needs. He was in a special needs classroom with different abilities, and we saw him regressing. And I was concerned, so I had a good relationship talking with the teachers. And it's key for you to have a good relationship with a teacher. Try to be as amicable as you possibly can be, because you want them on your team. You want them on your side. And the teacher was on my side, and she told me, have him go to the doctor and see if he could diagnose with autism, see if he has autism, and we could try to get him into the special program, IPP program with Dave Calloway.
Enough with fried and greased dinner for them to taste white rice again before they leave.
Oh, what's that?
Youngjan's eyes welled up into
okay.
And the rice seller looked away. Cho hated seeing Will cry.
Sorry, my phone just started playing.
Okay.
Audio was my fault. I just started playing an audiobook that I had on earlier.
We live and learn. We live and learn. You're a learner. You're a self-learner. And life is about learning.
He went to get into IPP programs. We brought him to the doctor, and we went through all the paperwork and the diagnosis and electronics, electrodes, and he was diagnosed with autism. He called it high functional autism at the time.
And Helen, how old was he? How old was he?
He was 3.5 around that time.
Okay.
Good question. Good. And I looked at my husband and said, well, what are we going to do? He said, what else are we going to do? We're going to take care of our son. And that's what we did. And we went and we got him into the program. Thank God to the teacher who mentioned the program to me, who suggested that program to me, because he would have been kept on regressing. And once I found out he had autism, I was full force. I needed to find out what this was. And there wasn't a lot of information out there at all, like there is now. I even used to travel all the way to Terrytown, New York to go to a meeting to find out about autism. It was interesting because these were people who were well-to-do in a sense. And some of them had oxygen tanks in their homes for their children. And they're doing all these different procedures for them to try to, in a sense, cure their children in some cases. And it's like, I can't do that. I can't subject my child to a certain procedure. Me personally, if there's going to be some repercussions that it may not work for him or might cause other things. So we decided we're going to help our child live in this world, to try to navigate the world as best as we can and have the world accept him for who he is.
Yes,
And that's what's
yes,
been our passion.
yes, yes, yes. Reverend Clayton, any thoughts for Mother Helen? Hopefully it's okay for me to call you Mother Helen, but I just feel that maternal energy is just coming through so loud and clear.
Well, the title of the show is Helen's Story.
Mm-hmm.
But Helen, could you share a little bit more about the challenges that you faced when trying to ensure that Chase received a good education? Well, can you just share that with us a little bit?
Yes. So you as a parent, you become a big advocate for your child. And while I'm an advocate for my child, I don't just think of him. I think of others who are behind him or with him, and that is. So I've gone to the parent meetings, what they're called PPT meetings, and when you go to a PPT meeting, that's when you're around the table with the special education teacher, the teachers, and if there's aide, the principal sometimes, and to discuss the plan for your child. So they create an individual education plan for your child, which is called an IEP. And that is a legal document that you have to make sure that what's written in that document is accurate and it's displaying what you want in that document. Remember, it's a legal document, so keep that in mind, and you make sure you read it. You have 4 days to give that document back to you, and you make sure you read that document. It's very important. And you could put your own notes in that document. Say, for instance, there's like, okay, we're going to give your son occupational therapy. Well, you're like, well, I want occupational therapy where he's getting more assistance with reading. And if that's not specified in the document, they don't have to do that. So make sure that your voice for your child is in that document. I'm not going to state the page. There's tons of information of how to navigate an IEP out there on the YouTube. Autism Speaks has all these free downloadable documents can assist you with that. But that's number one. And when you go to these meetings to discuss your child's future at the school system, you also have to make sure you record the meeting. You're legally right to record these meetings. And when you record the meetings, you get a different tone at the table than when you don't record the meetings. And they also have a right to record the meetings as well. You cannot sneak it. You have to let them know. You have to be very transparent. It's important to have a good relationship with the team. So when certain things were not working out because they are trying to dumb down my son's curriculum or not provide a certain service for them, I would always have documentation to prove my story, my facts, what I was saying to them. I always had documentation that they could not come back to me because they didn't know. And if it didn't work out, like for instance, he was going to be in the summer program, it was with typical students and not with special ed students, but he liked art. So I wanted him to go to Rotella Magnet School for the summer class. And for that to happen, he needed a one-on-one. And so the school was giving me a little challenge in time. And so I went to the State Board of Education, Special Education, and I spoke to their lawyers to get some insight of how I could address it locally. And that was able to help me out to make sure that he had the appropriate education he needed in summertime. Because you have a right to extended school year in the summer for your child. And when you have a child on the spectrum, it's important to continue the education through the summer because they tend to regress, with their behavior, the social behaviors. So it's good to keep that going on. And the school pays for the busing. They'll pay for, the lunches. And, during that, and sometimes it's 6 to 8 weeks, and you could have it extended for more if it's necessary. But it makes it better for the child to continue with the education. So Chase, since kindergarten all the way up through senior year of school, he was always in the summertime program.
Tremendous.
Because if he's not in the summertime program, I work full-time, my husband works full-time, where are our kids going to be? They're going to be on the computer, looking at whatever they want to look at on the computer, playing games. So what better way is to get them out the house and try to get assistance for them while you can is during the summertime as well.
Tremendous, tremendous. And Chase is 20 now, you mentioned, Helen?
21, I think it's 21.
Okay, great. And how has your perspective changed over time in terms of autism, if it has changed in terms of autism diagnosis?
Yeah, well, again, I didn't know anything about it. We didn't know anything about it. And of course, the first thing we think about, I can't say we, but I thought about was Rain Man, because I saw Chase jumping around. And I worked for a computer software company at the time. So I always bought educational software. So my kids have been in front of computers since they were born. And I saw him bouncing around about 3, spelling the word elephant repeatedly over and over again, umbrella repeatedly over and over again. And I'm like, what? How he's spelling these words that he's learning in the software game. And he was repetitive. So his behaviors were very repetitive. He wasn't looking in the eyes. He walked on his toes. And so I'm thinking Rain Man, but he's not Rain Man savant. And so there's more beyond a Rain Man. The spectrum is so wide, so large in the autism world, that you have individuals who are nonverbal, who have intellectual disabilities as well. But then there's some who could become doctors and lawyers, have families. And Chase is like in the middle. He's verbal, but he's very introverted and very quiet. And so he has a high IQ. But his social, I call it the social IQ. I know it's not a direct, that's my word, I call it.
Right.
His social IQ is not at the level of his intellectual IQ. And so his independence, like everyone else, wow, your son's 21. Are they living on their own? Did he have their license? Are they driving? Do they have a girlfriend? That's all no's for Chase. Does he have a full-time job, part-time job? That's no for Chase. But because his IQ, he's able to go to college. But again,
say that again.
Because IQ, he's still able to go to college. And the reason he's able to go to college, because while he was in the school system, I refused to let them dumb down his curriculum. I refused. They're like, well, he'll be better off with other peers that like him. Like, no, he's going to be better off, because our goal is for him to go to college. Whether he goes or not, that's my business. But my goal is for him to go to college, and that's your goal, is to teach him to go to college. And so never lower the bar for your child. Find the books. Everyone can't go to college. It's not for everyone. But if your son's good at electronics, well, talk to that school saying, well, let's focus on this. If they're good at drawing, well, let's focus on this thing. And sometimes they are focused so much on curriculum where it's not even to help the child in their life going forward. And so you have to try to balance that out, but you make sure you focus on what their niche is and what they're good at to help them to go forward. So Chase always loved to draw. His drawing was like scribbles in the beginning, and then he has a mom like me. It's like color inside the lines, Chase. So, and then he loved the alphabet. And so I found that I went into his world of what he loved. He loved Blue's Clues, still does. He loves all these little cartoony things, and he loves alphabets, drawings. So I said, why don't you start drawing some things? And he did. And it finally flourished so much that he was able to write 3 books, children's books.
Cut it out. Say that again.
I went into his world.
And when you say, Helen, a mom like me, just elaborate. We're here to pat you on the back, but what does that mean, mom like me?
I have expectations of our children, and I look at myself as, one day I'm not going to be here. One day my husband's, we're not going to be here. And what can we do to help our children survive when we're not here? So the way I'm very old fashioned, strict. I'm just old school person, respect, honor, love of God. I mean, all those are very important to us. And we taught him that as well. And we didn't allow any certain behaviors from him. I just would not allow that, because I'll give you an example. I was in the store with Chase at the CVS, I believe, and we were walking, and this little boy came and hit Chase. I'm like, oh my goodness. She's like, oh, he has autism. So I don't mind you saying he has autism, but say you're sorry. I'm sorry that he hit your son, but he has autism. But don't make that an excuse. You still have to teach your child on the spectrum what's right and wrong. And so that's our thing, is that we're going to teach our child what's right and wrong. And now he's really innocent to the world, maybe too innocent to the world. And so in the situation when he was in middle school, he didn't like it because the kids were so rambunctious and were not behaving as he's expected to behave. And he didn't want to go to school. And so I thought, he's just trying to get out of school because, it's not his favorite place. And so I said, do you want me to go? And he actually said yes. And it shocked me because he's not usually vocal like that. He's, like I said, he's very introverted and quiet. And so I went to the school and sat in the classroom, and he was absolutely right. There was no control in the classroom at all. I felt like I was in the movies where the kids were throwing stuff at each other in the classroom. The teacher had no control. And so that was chaos for him. That's sensory for him.
Yes.
So certain noises are sensory for him and bother him. And so we have to keep that in mind for children on the spectrum, because there are certain sensory issues they have, such as a certain lighting will impact them. So the lighting in the school systems bother them. Like it really impacts them in such a way that we can't understand. And so they may act out, but let's figure out if a child's acting out, why they're acting out. Do we ever ask the question, why is that child acting out? Or does the school system just punish them? And so I never allow that with any of my two boys, that you're not going to just punish a child if they get a bad grade on a test. You're going to have them retake it again so they know why they got a bad grade on the test. And I did that. I did that in the public schools, the private schools, and the parochial schools with both my boys. It's like giving a child a bad grade does not help them, and you keep on moving. I had them retake it every time the test. I mean, anything under a B, they will retake it.
We're going to talk more about the social chase, Ellen, and you're working with the police department and your accolades that you've gotten from the state. But I was curious if a parent is listening in, or in terms of any resources that you might be able to share with a parent that's really struggling with this issue, and how we can kind of make their path, if not a little more smooth, or at least a little bit more informed.
So it's important to know what your rights are. And there's a lot of organizations out there. I would say that there's ASRC in Connecticut that you could go to. They have a list of resources for you. There is ctfeet.org, which I'm a board president of. We are updating the list of information there for you. And there is a list, the Connecticut Department of Development Services also has a list of resources out there. There is, there's ARCs in Connecticut. There's Southington ARC, there's the Litchfield ARC, and there's a Waterbury ARC. You could contact them. And these are some of the things that the school should be telling its teachers. I've been trying to advocate. We should be given, during a PPT meeting, a list of resources to parents so they know. Parents don't know about the Department of Social Services. They don't know about the Department of Development Services. They don't know these things. And I didn't know it until I seeked it out. And I feel like I'm a knowledgeable person. So they're not trying to, in some cases, to help the parent navigate their child and making them to be a most successful citizen of the United States as possible. So there is, Autism Speaks also has a list of information, and they have quite a bit of, we call toolkits. When child's first diagnosed, you could download that. When your child's having behavior problems, they could download the toolkits for that. If your child's gonna get a haircut for the first time, because that's very sensory for them, there's information for that. Dentists, there's information for a grandparent who's helping with the children, the siblings. There's tons of free information on the Autism's website, Speaks website, under family resources. And they have a toll-free number you could call. If you have any questions, still toll-free, and they have it in Spanish as well.
Just elaborate when you mention about the haircut, because I think for the layperson, we really don't even understand everything that's so sensitive.
Yeah, so it's for everybody's different on the spectrum. It's the noise, the buzzing noise, the clipping noise, the feeling on the skin. Like some individuals' sensory, if you touch their skin, it's like pins and needles going up and through their arm.
Mm.
It's just, that's how sensory it is.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the noise sensory, some of them, it's like a bunch of trains going through your brain.
Mm.
Like if they go into a mall, it's totally sensory overload. So you see a kid falling out on the ground, it may not be because they're behaving, it may be because they are going through a sensory overload and they can't handle it. It's painful for them and they don't know what to do. And some of them who can't speak, you can't speak, how else are you going to communicate? Sometimes they bang their heads, they bite themselves. And so again, we have to realize when these behaviors are happening, why are they happening?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I do have on my Social Chase page, I have videos of people sharing their stories as well. It's called the socialchase.org. They could go to that as well. I have a list that I just received from one of our members, Beth Lambert. She's a BCBA.
Mm-hmm.
A list of all the resources. So if anybody, excuse me.
Go ahead.
So if anybody wants that list of resources, they can email me from Helen at the socialchase.org, or just go to the website and say, please send the resources to me, and I'll email you that list she provided to me. It's going to go on our website soon, but I'll send it out to everybody. And it's pages of resources about the BCBAs of assistance and respite. So when you're so let me explain something. I'm sorry. So Department of Development Services is something I'm battling with. You have to have an IQ 69 or below to get services. If you have an IQ, if your child has an IQ of above 70, you are not part of DDS. You have to go to Department of Social Services, which right now there's no funding for, and there's over 2,000 people on that waiting list to get help for their child that has an IQ. So in the state of Connecticut, they are, I'm going to say, discriminating that a person who has a high IQ can function in their life and be independent when they can't. They still need the same services that the DDS individuals receives, but there's no funding in it. So it's very important to register your child. As soon as your child is diagnosed for autism, register with DDS, especially if IQ is low, because you can start getting services early, including you can get respite care. So sometimes it's very challenging for parents with the behaviors of their child and the focus on the child, and just the heartbreak of trying to help their child sometimes, that they need a break too. Yes. So there is respite care that the state will provide to you through DDS.
And you referenced social chase. Just let's elaborate a little bit more on this social chase. I love I've been spending a lot of my life in terms of marketing and PR and wordsmithing, but I love the social chase kind of brand. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I was planning one day. I was like, one day I'm going to have a nonprofit organization, and I'm like, why am I going to start a nonprofit organization when there's so many out there? Let's try to bring them all together. But there was still a need in Waterbury. There's nothing for these late teens to adults, nothing. I would take Chase and bring him places, and bring some of his friends with me. But why we have to keep traveling so far to get the services for these young people? So I started a program like, well, we're chasing after to be the social. And my son's name is Chase. I said, so the social chase is we're chasing after these individuals become more social. I'm talking fast because I get excited. So I'm sorry for everybody who doesn't miss. I'm missing some words.
Take your time.
So that's the social chase, is that we're chasing after to help them to be social, to be included in the society. And so I started a group. I'm just a mom, started a group, and it's been successful in terms of when at the end of the certain events, they come up to me and they say, I'm so happy. And that just makes it, every single voluntary money I put into this thing, it makes it all worth it. Because when they come to me and say, I'm happy, I'm so happy, I'm like, what else can I do? I have to keep moving. So the social chase right now, we were able to partner at one time with Post University. I was an alumni there, and I said, I want our kids to go on the campus, and I want them to be integrated with the students on the campus and interact with them. So it took a lot of conversations with Post, and I was able to collaborate with Autism Speaks, and we were able to get a room, and it was just board games. The kids could not use any electronic games. It had to be board games. And so the athletic director got involved and had the teams were starting to volunteer to play with our youth. so much that they're fighting over who's going to volunteer to play with our youth. So they'll play apples to apples, have conversations with them that way, bingo, Uno, and they loved it. The youth loved it. And they actually miss it because they haven't been in part of COVID. And then I collaborated with Artie Young. I went there and I went, to my mom mode. I'm like, and we had cookie classes for them. And Artie Young was so fantastic. And the kids loved it. And I'm so grateful to them because we did things handmade. I mean, we just weren't cooking. I told Artie Young, all right, we're going to make pasta. Like, oh boy, I'm like, no. They're going to make pasta by hand and roll it out and make it. And that's what we did. And they did great. They're like, okay, we're going to do a pizza. They're like, no. They're going to put the yeast in the bowl, rise it, and they're going to make their own pizza. And I had them make their own sauce. So we gave them those skills and learned hamburgers and had them fried chicken wings. So they loved that. And we did gingerbread lanterns during the wintertime, and they just loved it. And each parent has to pay what the cost is. So this is a parent-supported group. We do not have any behavioral therapists with us because who knows the child better but the parent? So the parent must stay with their child.
Let me shift for just a second, Ellen, because in the news we hear, unfortunately and regrettably, autism folks it's diagnosed by the police department and the tragedies that have occurred, and that probably might be occurring as we speak right now. So tell us a little bit about your relationship and involvement with the police department.
So when I started seeing that, I called Autism Speaks that I need some materials. I want to do some training with the police department and the Waterbury Police Department. And fortunately, Chief Vernon Riddick, we knew him, and I approached him with it. I said, it could be whatever you need. So we did it at, right before they went out into the field. I forgot what they call it right before they did go out in the field. It was like a 10-minute training I did at that time just to give them, everyone on the spectrum is different. When you approach them, they're not going to be always compliant because they don't know who you are. And they are not going to react to you the way you want to react. They're not going to look you in your eyes. They might try to reach for something that's shiny on you or your gun. They will be afraid of you and might run and run right into danger. And I said, they're going to may say things to you you may not like. I said, do not take it personal. Whatever comes out of Autism Speaks person's behavior or their mouths, do not take it personal because it's not about you, because they're in their own world trying to navigate what you're trying to say to them. I said, you have to speak to them slowly because they're not going to understand everything you say. And if they're hurt, they're not going to be able to convey to you they're hurt, whether they're verbal or nonverbal. So those are just some of the things that I started training in Waterbury, thanks to Chief Vernon Riddick. And then I was called to Cheshire. I went and did a training with them. And now I'm doing a regional training. Chief Spagnola called me and I'm doing a regional training and training the cadets. This is all volunteer work on my part. So I'll take some time off of work or go early in the morning before I go to work. And it's just important. It's important to convey to the police that you can't interact with a person on the spectrum the same way as you can that's someone who's typical. They're in a different world than you are. And so I explained to them, if you touch them, they might pull their hand away because you touching them is actually hurting them. As I said, they're sensory. If your sirens are on, it's hurting them. It's sensory for them. So they're behaving a certain way, then turn your sirens off when you get there. Because they don't know how to handle certain things the way we do, because the way the brain works. I try to keep them at a very high level. And I've gotten a really good response. And I always share this at the end. A lot of them came up to me and said, thank you. And one officer came up to me and hugged me at the end. And I was like, this is worth it. And especially like training the cadets, they seem like they really want to understand. And they come up to me, it's like, I know someone on the spectrum and thank you for sharing this. Or, and again, my training is an hour. It's just a high level training. I mean, they need more training than that. And I know the state is working on that, but what I do is if I touch somebody to think differently, that makes me happy. And officers have come back to me and said, I remember you teaching us about the water, because an individual on a spectrum, for some reason, they love water.
Mm.
And if they are out, if they leave the home, I tell them, you check every single water resource around you. Pools in the backyard, ponds, that's where they're going to be, because an individual on the spectrum will walk directly into water and drown. They will walk out the house in the middle of the freezing cold, barefooted, and go somewhere where they want to go because they are focused on maybe going to Chuck E. Cheese. And so they'll walk outside, not thinking of anything, may even take off their clothes and walk and not think of what they're doing is not appropriate, because their focus is to go somewhere. A friend of mine was, well-to-do, and her son loved dishwashers, and he disappeared out the house. He half clothes, went to the neighbor's house and started emptying out the dishwasher. Luckily, the neighbor knew about the person. So that's another thing. If you're in a neighborhood, let the people in your neighborhood know your child's on the spectrum, so they don't call the police officers on them. And another thing is bring your child to the police department, introduce them to the police officers so they know who they are. It's important to establish a relationship. And some officers will even come to your house and speak with your child. But get that engagement with your officers as soon as possible. Have the conversations. For my conversations, we now have a registry for autism in Waterbury. I forgot it's a different title for it, and I have a brain freeze. I'm sorry, but it is on their website as a form. And they can fill that out and provide a picture to the officers. So when the officers get a phone call, it would pop up on the screen that they know that this individual is on the spectrum and these are the behaviors this individual has.
Yes.
And so it's not only important for the parent and the child, but it makes it easier for the officer because they know what they're getting into in terms of the situation. It prepares them.
For sure.
That's important because the officer, they have certain mindsets that, they got to go to this situation. It's a bad situation. And they have to go there with a certain mindset.
Right.
If they're educated before they go to that situation, it changes their demeanor for the most part. So education is so key in all parts for everyone, even in the churches. It's good for the congregation to know that this person's on the spectrum, and they should have somebody talk about the person on the spectrum. And
Reverend Perry, that's your cue, Reverend Perry.
I've been waiting for my cue, Tom. I was getting ready to interrupt, but I said,
I just would enjoy it.
Remember that I am on the show as well.
I want to kind of just remind people of that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you did. I think that's an incredible story that you're giving us, Helen. And I think part of the reason the story is so incredible is because of the stigma that sometimes any illness carries with it in a community. And for people to advocate and to make aware and empower other members of the community, that's an awesome story.
Yes.
And you seem to have been able to accomplish this. One of the things that I really liked that you said was that you looked at Chase and you saw what his gifts and his talents were.
Yes.
And that you followed through with that. Now, there may be a lot of parents whose children may not be aware that this is one of the things that they need to look at and harness, And you didn't tell us the name of the book, but you did tell us he's an author. So before we get off the show, we do want to know that so we can tell folks to go and buy this book.
Yes.
And thirdly, I want to ask you, I see you reached out to the police department, but in terms of the community, like churches, Masons, New Opportunities, other groups that, you see, you're well known in Waterbury, you and Al, well, you and your husband. So you're going to get a lot of more pull than maybe someone who may not have your background. How do we reach those people? What can we do to help them?
Well, usually people give me a call and I'll do it. So I went to the Greek Orthodox Church. They called me and I went. I went into the Baptist church, and they called me and I went.
Mm.
So it depends. If you call me, I'll go and I'll speak. I try to fit into my schedule.
Oh, yeah.
And it's important that other parents see what I'm doing and be empowered they can do it too, because I'm a mom.
Mm.
And it's also important to get the school engaged. So we're very fortunate because the schools, when we got involved before, the schools were not celebrating autism. April was Autism Awareness Month. The school district was not.
Mm.
And then I got involved. And the school that Chase was going to, Gil Martin, they had an Autism Awareness Day. They did a walk around. We had the students engaged to learn about autism. Alan DJ did a little thing for them.
Mm.
So we got the school system involved. And so they started recognizing April's Autism Awareness Month. And then we started lunch bunches because of the social challenges of Chase. We had lunch bunches with typical and individuals on the spectrum to eat lunch together and have a conversation. And sometimes a social therapist would be there with them to help them with their social skills. And then when he went to high school, unfortunately, I had, Brandy was his behavioral therapist, and she was such a loving and good person. I call him one of her angels.
Mm.
We started a program at Career Academy during Autism Awareness Month, where we had ambassadors. If they had to be a junior, a sophomore, you had to be a junior, and it became ambassador for Autism Awareness Day.
Mm.
And we dressed blue, and she had a booth. They took pictures in. She made a booth, and they took pictures. They all wore blue, and they were happy. And we got the students engaged. They worked with the other students and did activities that neurotypical and the neurodiverse students were doing things together. And I'm saying this is because I was told that many of the students who were hiding from being autistic finally admitted that they were, and they weren't embarrassed by it. So Chase has never been embarrassed that he has autism. We never made that be an embarrassment for him. It's just part of who he is. It's not who he is, it's part of who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Helen, I have one more thing to ask you. I know it's an family emotional, a strain between, just it's a burden.
Yes.
And then, the cost.
Yep.
No one really understands what that cost is.
Right.
And thirdly, I think you mentioned that you went to the Yale Child Care Center.
Correct.
Was that expensive for you, or is that something that's taken care of?
So honestly, my investment financially in Chase's early years, I just took advantage of the school system to give. So after school programs, he'd have a one-on-one. You're busing involved with that. Therapies, I didn't do therapies with Chase until recently. But he did go to, we got him diagnosed again through Yale because they have a free service at the Yale Child Center. So definitely check out the Yale Child Center, also the Center for Autism in New Britain Hospital up there. You could get diagnosis for free, or you could use your insurance. And they have a lot of studies going on at Yale that it's a study for them, but it also helps your child out and helps you to figure out what things you can do for your child. And you can bring that document to the school systems to make sure you get the appropriate support for your child. So some school systems aren't always trying to do what's your best interest. They're looking at bottom lines, or they're looking at not want to stress their systems, but they get money from the state. They get money from the federal government. And the one thing that they can't mention in the school system during a meeting is money. Which is why it's important to record. So the Yale Students Child Center, definitely contact him. They have a lot going on. You have children who are adults now. They have Yale Cassie, which is a program for adults on the spectrum. It's free. There's a lot of different activities for them. We used to travel up. Dr. Joe is wonderful. We used to travel up to New Haven to go to these programs, but it's hard for me when I work in Hartford, have to drive all the way back to Waterbury, then drive to New Haven to bring them to those programs. And so a lot of parents can't do that, and it's stressful. And that's why I started the Social Chase, which now I have a Social Chase show as well. where
All
I'm
right.
doing interviews like this with people with special needs and on the spectrum.
Excellent.
That's a cable show
Excellent.
I have in Waterbury at Sky Cable 13. And my crew are on the spectrum.
Oh, that's fantastic.
All volunteer. They all volunteer, though. Can't pay them.
Fantastic. Tell us about the book. Reverend Perry's mentioned the book, Helen. Tell us about
So Chase, as I said, we went into Chase's world. And since I'm a computer geek person, I know how to use Photoshop and things like that. And so I bought Chase a program so that I can keep drawing on paper and then it gets thrown out. I bought him a program called Art Rage. So that way he can save his characters. And so when I saw he had some great characters, I said, did you have all your letters? He's like, yes. I always said, what's going to happen with this young man when we're not here? Who's going to hire him? What kind of job can he have? Because he's able, but not able. If you're not able and you have, other challenges, you get money from the state. If you're able, you don't have a lot of chance, you don't get any money. And then you can't go anywhere because you don't have the ability to go anywhere. So we're like the middle class of the spectrum. We don't get nothing. And so I was like, well, maybe one day he could be a children's book author. I said, maybe one day he could be that, Chase. I said that when he was about maybe 9 or something like that. And then I saw his artwork and I'm like, wow, it got really, really good. I said, you ready to write a book now? He's like, sure. I said, well, here's the software. And he wrote 3 books. He's writing his 4th book right now. It's called The Letter Critters. The lettercritters.com is his website. He also has merchandise on there. He has free coloring books you could download to color for free. And we self-published because I know how to do these things. So we self-published on Amazon. And his 3rd book, we went to a publisher for Mascot Books. And we donate the proceeds back to Autism organization and various ones. And it's something that made him happy. It's more of making him happy than a moneymaker. It's more about making him happy. So he loves when people love his books. He loves when people buys his books. It just puts such a smile on his face.
Yeah.
It's priceless to me. So
you've had the book signings, Helen. I mean, I've seen the pictures of tell us about the book signings where you can see the smiles and yes.
So I take Chase out of his comfort zone quite a bit. And I challenge him and he does a book reading and we talk it over saying, because he's very monotone. He's a very monotone voice. I'm going to be honest with you. I just say, you're boring. I say, so we have to work on this. And he did. And he tries the fluctuation. So each book reading, he got better at it. So each time I challenged him, he got better at it. And I'll give an example. Because of his sensory, before we even knew he had autism, he hated the happy birthday song. He used to scream and cry. And my family, my husband's family, they say it really loud. If he knows my husband, they sing it loud and very rambunctiously, and it's beautiful, but it's loud. My mother-in-law used to go, oh, like this all the time. Well, Chase used to scream and try to squirm and get out all the time. And it was just cry. We had to bring him out, bring him back in, but keep him in, and the husband keep holding him. And then we never let him leave from there, not knowing how sensory he was. But one day, my mother-in-law's birthday, he started singing the song. So now he sings the song like the Taylors do. If we knew he had autism, would I have like, oh, let's take him out. Let's not keep him there. Let's not do that to him. Would I have done that? And then he wouldn't have had that growth.
Yes.
So my thing is, I'm always going to try something. You have to try. If it doesn't work, then you move on to something else. So that's my philosophy with my children. People's like, oh, well, I want to give my child a choice. He doesn't want to do that. I don't give my child a choice. They don't want to do it or not. I say you have a choice to try it. And then after that, if you don't like it, then you have the choice to not do it. I said, anything you do, it has to be from education. You have to be educated to know why you're making these choices.
We have about 5 minutes, everybody. So again, if thoughts come to your mind or want to get some things out. And I guess I want to say, Reverend Perry, that Helen's well known in Waterbury and other cities, but she's also well known here in New Haven. She and Tracy Foskey have done a number of events.
Oh, she's wonderful. Tracy's wonderful.
And so we share her being part of her family here in New Haven.
Tom, I would like to say something to Helen. You have given us so much information, and you've taught us so much today. This should be a model. This should be placed somewhere for other parents, other societies to grab hold of and learn. You're actually saving lives of autism children.
That's right.
And I'm so grateful that I was able to be a part of this show, to hear your story. It has opened my eyes to so much. And I'm hoping some way, somehow, that you can spread this, not only in Connecticut, but across the country and even the world, because this is absolutely fabulous. Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm not alone in this at all. There's many moms like me and fathers like me out there. I do want to add, if you don't mind,
please.
It's important for parents to get involved with legislation. I didn't mention that. It's very important. I'm also on the board of SeekCT.com, who we're at the grassroots of talking to legislators to make a change in how our individuals on the spectrum are provided services and provided equality in the school system. So it's important that if you have a child on the spectrum, contact your local legislator and let them come by and see your child and talk with them, because they're the ones that are making the decisions for your child in this state. They're the ones that are or are not providing enough services and money for your child in the state. If they don't know, they're not going to do. So it's very important for you to get involved with legislation, even if it's a matter of writing letters and with Congress and the Senate. Contact Johanna Hayes or your local congressperson or Bloomingdale and Chris Murphy and let them know how you feel. I got involved with legislation through Autism Speaks. I was ambassador, went down to DC, used our voice, knocked down a lot of doors to get the Autism Care Act passed. So it's important to get involved. It doesn't have to take a lot of your time, but we have to get involved. There should be more people who look like me at these national organizations who are trying to use their voice. And it just needs one voice. When I went to Autism Speaks, there was no person of color on their website. I made a phone call to New York before I got involved, and I said, what's going on? Why there's not representation of someone who's of African-American? I've continuously advocated for that. If you go to Autism Speaks, you'll see how diverse they are right now. I'm not gonna say it's just me, but I had a major voice in that because I spoke to the presidents and had to make changes, and they promised me that they were gonna make changes. So just little old me in Waterbury made this change at a national organization. Little you anywhere can make a difference. Don't let anybody stop you from using your voice, but you have to be strategic in how you use your voice.
Excellent.
So that's
awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much. When you run for public office, let me know. I want to work with you.
People keep asking me that. I think I'm more powerful being in the background. I don't have to worry about, because I'm not gonna fall into the trap of, oh, you gotta go what everybody else says. I'm a fighter. And so if I go there, then they're not gonna like me. Because I'm going to I want to make a difference. I see what changes that need to happen, and we're still stuck in this old way of thinking, but we have to do better for our children. We have to provide better service for our children. We have to provide better understanding for our children. Our children should not be being arrested when they're in preschool or kindergarten for behaviors. That is egregious to me. Just because you don't understand my child. And then the parents need help too, because they don't understand the school system. And so we have to come together as the village. We have to understand both sides of it. There has to be respect on both sides. And the level of respect is going out the door. Let's bring the respect back, and then we can get things done for our children. And because our children, especially of African-American descent, should not be at the bottom of the barrel. We should be rising up. Not only should it be a few percentage, it should be more, because they can do it. They just need to have love and hope and education and support.
Excellent. Excellent. Helen, thank you so much. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Helen, can't wait to have you and Chase on the show together.
That's right. That's
With what
right.
I'm giving, got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions, looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings, and I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains, haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna